So, good evening, everyone. Tonight's class is the third of a series of 4, I think, on restraint. We'll meditate first, but I want to welcome Jay. Welcome to our Sangha, Jay. I know you said you don't have much meditation experience, but the meditation method we use is very simple, and it's also part of a much broader, not that much broader, but a broader framework. In other words, it's not just meditation. But the meditation method is called Shamatha Vipassana. Shamatha means to quiet the mind. Vipassana means to gain insight. And it's within that broader framework that we gain insight. It's not necessarily while we're sitting. In fact, it's a good idea, anything other than to deepen your concentration while you're meditating. That concentration is what supports the development of that broader framework that I talk about. And our classes are about that broader framework. Deep into it. We'll see who that is, and we'll meditate. Hello, Helen. Just in time. So the special about the posture. The posture, though, should be as comfortable as possibly can be. If you're comfortable like that, that's fine. If your legs start getting a little bit cranky, you can put a couple of pillows under your knees. It's also fine to sit in a chair. There's nothing magical or mystical about the sitting posture. I've been sitting on the floor for many years, so it's the most comfortable way for me. But however you sit and however you find yourself most comfortable, that's the way you want to develop your practice. The consistency in your posture is important. Consistency in place where you meditate, the method, and of course the time and the framework. I hope you continue to join us, and we get into that during each class. So as soon as Maura gets in here, we'll start. Trying to take what?
She said, trying to take some of that money.
I know it's always lighter when you're here.
I was going to offer some soup instead.
Yeah,
take some of the money.
That's good. You never know what Maura's going to pull out of one of those bags. That's just soup. So. Glad you're here, Maura.
There's some black bean hummus.
Okay. Now is the time to meditate. So again, welcome, Jay. I'll talk us into it doesn't need any other instruction besides what I just gave. So find your relaxed meditative posture and gently close your eyes and gently close your mouths. And holding your back straight but not stiff, your ears aligned with your shoulders, and nose aligned with your navel. But holding yourself very loosely, very gently, very lovingly. Just settle into this room. Settle onto your seats. Settle into your bodies. And settle into your minds. And take a moment to become aware of the sensation of breathing in your body. Just get a feel for what that's like. To be mindful of your breath in your body. And while remaining mindful of your breath in your body, notice that thoughts are flowing. We're conscious beings, thoughts should be flowing. The purpose of meditation is to not be distracted by your own thoughts. So when you find that you're caught up in your thinking again, acknowledge that and return your mindfulness to the sensation of breathing. I'll repeat that. When you find that you're caught up in your thinking again, simply acknowledge that and return your mindfulness to the sensation of breathing. Relaxing your thoughts, remaining mindful of your breathing. And we'll meditate for 20 minutes with callbacks every 5 minutes. relaxing thoughts, remaining mindful of your breathing. relaxing thoughts, remaining mindful of your breathing. relaxing thoughts, remaining mindful of your breathing. If a persistent thought or feeling arises, stay with it for a moment or two. Recognize it as impermanent and return your mindfulness to the sensation of breathing. And we'll meditate for 5 more minutes. Take a moment to notice the quality of your mind. Be at peace with your mind. And when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes. So tonight's talk is the third in a series on restraint, but I like to put this in a little bit of perspective for Jay, or probably won't make much sense. So everything that I teach, Jay, is based on what the Buddha taught. Do you know anything about Buddhism? You're going to get a very brief introduction, whether you like it or not.
Okay. 2,500-year history in 2.5 seconds. No. It's about 20 minutes.
It's gonna be the middle way, somewhere in between. So, this gentleman known as Siddhartha Gautama left his home when he was 29 years old, in search of understanding, if it was possible, to understand the nature of human suffering, and why there was so much competitiveness and aggressiveness in the people that he had in his life. So he wandered around northern India. This is the real short version. He wandered around northern India for 6 years, studying with some of the most advanced spiritual teachers, and practicing some of the most severe ascetic practices. And at the end of those 6 years, he realized he was nowhere closer to understanding what he set out to understand. And he remembered a meditation method that he had used. It came on spontaneously when he was 5 years old. And he decided to use that meditation method with the strong intention that I'm going to meditate, calm my mind until I understand. And he did that. He meditated over a period of about 40 days. And during that meditation session, he came to understand the nature of his own confusion. And through that, he understood the nature of all of humanity's confusion. And it's out of that, the underlying cause of that confusion was ignorance, and a very specific ignorance, but an ignorance of the way things really are in the world. So he developed a path to teach other people how to recognize their ignorance, put it aside, and develop an understanding of the true nature of reality. And that is the Eightfold Path. The meditation method that you just did was one factor of that, the eighth factor. When he identified the cause of suffering as ignorance, he also identified our individual contributions to that. And that is craving and clinging. And craving is wanting something more than what we have. It's also not getting what we don't want as an aspect of craving. And once we get something that we want, or we achieve a state where we're void of what we don't want, we start clinging to that. And restraint speaks directly to that, because that is how we continue our ignorance, by craving and clinging. Is that clear? Or as clear as it can be? So that's a very, very brief introduction to what the Buddha taught. But what he taught is really simple. It's our own complicated minds that are rooted in that ignorance that make it a little bit difficult to develop. So this is, again, the third of 4 talks on restraint and developing restraint. An aspect of restraint, or an aspect of a lack of restraint, is a very distracted mind that is attached to another word for that is mindlessness. In this sutta, the Buddha uses the word heedlessness. We're simply so distracted by satisfying our ego that we don't even know what's occurring in our life, and we create additional stress that way. I think that we all know that too. I mean, but even that's part of ignorance. We don't want to face it. We admit our own contributions to ignorance. So, the Buddha's words: friends, pay close attention, and I will teach you about one who dwells in heedlessness and one who dwells in heedfulness. I'm going to use those words where you could substitute mindfulness and mindlessness for heedfulness, etc. And how does one dwell in heedlessness? When one is unrestrained at the eye, the mind is agitated and distracted by mental fabrications. When agitated and distracted, there is no joy and no passion for the Dhamma. Lacking passion for the Dhamma, there is no serenity. There is only disappointment and distraction. When the mind is distracted, there can be no Dhamma. Lacking the Dhamma, there is only heedlessness. So again, I got to put this a little bit in perspective. One of the primary and important teachings that the Buddha developed is that our senses act like distraction points. And something comes into our line of vision, we become distracted by it. And once we become distracted by it, we become attached to it. And he calls that eye consciousness. And if you look at it, that's a pretty apt description, because something contacts my eye, and now I start thinking about it. It creates a line of thinking. Clear to everybody? Mm-hmm. It really isn't that difficult, is it? Especially when you have a brilliant teacher. When one dwells unrestrained over the ear or the nose or the tongue or the body, the mind is agitated and distracted. There is no joy and no passion for the Dhamma. Notice the Buddha's not saying there's no joy, period. In fact, we're usually pretty full of joy when we've senses. But he's pointing out that by doing that, we're distracted from the Dhamma. There's no joy in the Dhamma. There is only disappointment and distraction. When the mind is distracted, there can be no Dhamma. Lacking the Dhamma, there is only heedlessness. When the mind is distracted, there can be no Dhamma. Why did the Buddha teach meditation? To deepen concentration. When there's no concentration, there can be no Dhamma. When one dwells unrestrained of thoughts, the mind is agitated and distracted by ideological fabrications. There is no joy and no passion for the Dhamma. Lacking passion for the Dhamma, there is no serenity. There is only disappointment and distraction. When the mind is distracted, there can be no Dhamma. Lacking Dhamma, there is only heedlessness. So most of us, especially when we first come to meditation practice, we talk about this monkey mind, this mind that we just can't quiet down. That's what the Buddha is referring to in a general way. But we also can become enamored with our ideas and not let go of those ideas. Our mental energy will go to protecting and defending those ideas that we have. Again, that's a little bit more specific way of being distracted by our thinking. This is how... sorry, I missed the page. This is how one dwells in heedlessness. And how does one dwell in heedfulness? When a Dhamma practitioner dwells in restraint with the eye, with nose, with the ear, with the tongue, and with the body, the mind is not agitated or distracted by mental fabrications. Those are the other suttas, the first two, spoke directly to this, didn't they? If we can learn to practice restraint at that contact, when something is coming into our consciousness and our minds are starting to join with it, that if we can practice restraint, or at least recognize that it's at that point we should practice restraint, we are, to put it in some other words, we're protecting the sense gates. We're protecting ourselves from losing our minds, from falling into heedlessness. There is joy and passion for the Dhamma. There being passion for the Dhamma, there is serenity. I think it was Liz, I think it was you talking about that last week, when you recognize it, that helped to reinforce your own Dhamma practice. I mean, again, that's what the Buddha's referring to.
When you get to the point when you can recognize it.
Yes, and that's joy in the Dhamma.
Yeah, you don't necessarily have restraint at that point, but you start to recognize these things.
Yeah.
And then the restraint follows once you become more skilled. Then you can apply the Dhamma and be more skillful.
Yeah, and you see directly the practical application. When you see how to do it, it's somewhat exciting anyway, isn't it?
Did you use the phrase gateway to your senses or something like that?
Protecting the sense gates is how that's often, I don't often use it because to me it sounds a little too conceptual, but it is true. We learn to protect our sense gates. We learn that just because something's coming in doesn't mean that I have to attach to it. I can recognize the impermanence of it. I can recognize the futility of creating an identity, of creating a desire. And of course, it does not mean that we're not engaged with the world. It simply means we don't become attached to it.
Well, it sounds like Liz was saying recognizing that point at the gate.
Yes, at that gate, at the sense gate. Ear, eye, nose, tongue, and ultimately it really is consciousness or ongoing thinking rooted in ignorance that we need to be most mindful of. What am I attaching myself to through my thoughts, through my thinking process? There is joy and passion for the Dhamma. There being passion for the Dhamma, there is serenity. How does the Buddha describe an awakened human being? Nothing magical or mystical. Calm. Your mind is calm. They're at peace. But it's a lasting peace, a lasting equanimity. There is contentment. The Dhamma is present moment by moment, and they dwell in heedfulness, or they dwell in mindfulness. When one dwells well restrained of thoughts, the mind is not agitated or distracted by ideological fabrications. There is joy and passion for the Dhamma. There being passion for the Dhamma, there is serenity. There is contentment. The Dhamma is present moment by moment, and they dwell in heedfulness. This is how one dwells in heedfulness. That sutta. Next week is the Kuma Sutta. The only reason I say that is that the Kuma means the tortoise. This is the sutta on the tortoise. So you imagine going through your life with that type of peace, very slow and at peace, nothing attaching. Any questions directly about the sutta? And then we'll go around the room. Maura.
So I was wondering, in both that there is no joy, there is joy, and I'm thinking of kind of joy as that kind of the pretty or that titi, that the sensation which kind of comes from concentration, and that joy rather than pleasurable excitement. And then, so he says, okay, my question has to do with there's passion for the Dhamma. So he said then there's joy when one is restrained at the sense gates, right? So you're bringing in, you're concentrating on what's occurring in each moment. You're not attaching yourself to it. Joy arises, and passion for the Dhamma arises in their serenity. So I was wondering, it's interesting that he uses the word passion there. Do you want to expound on that?
Yeah.
Expound on that?
I will expound on it. For one thing, these are translations from the Pali. And so the Pali language is in some ways much more descriptive, and in other ways it's much more broad. But so the translations have to relate to the English language when translating into English. So there's expound on it. There's good passion and there's bad passion. Passion for the Dhamma is good. We should have enthusiasm for the Dhamma, but we should also recognize, and maybe this is the point, the point that good passion is separated from skillful passion is separated from unskillful passion is at the same point. It's in our own minds. And maybe that's where the confusion lies. It's not, the distinction is that whatever is motivating us to join with something, whether it's with a big bowl of chocolate ice cream or a nice half-hour meditation sit, the motivation feels the same, doesn't it? If it's joyful, if we're joyful about both of us, we're passionate about it. But one may result in gaining weight and not learning much about the Dhamma, and one will lead towards awakening. So the underlying motivation may feel the same, but it's what direction are we going in? And that really points to the potential of each moment, because that choice is the choice that we make in each moment of our lives, even though we shouldn't be that fixated that we think about it that often. Each moment holds the potential to incline our minds towards awakening or continue ignorance. And so passion for the Dhamma, and Liz really explained it great last week. Once you start recognizing how effective it is in delivering what we really want, lasting peace and happiness, we should have great passion for it, shouldn't we? We should have a lot of enthusiasm for it. And conversely, we should start becoming less passionate about the things that are arising from ignorance and contributing to more ignorance. That's where the Buddha talks about disenchantment in two different ways. One is to be disenchanted with the things of the world in a general way, but then also to be very disenchanted about the things that we're using to create an identity over. That can even become confusing when we look at it that way. We have to look at how we're applying it. Everything the Buddha taught was taught situationally. So, Maura, you had another follow-up question, I think.
Yeah, I think that what I was maybe kind of thinking about was like that increasing concentration from restraint to joy to, and so it's just kind of interesting they use the passion for Dhamma. So I didn't know if he meant like Dhamma as reality as it's unfolding, or Dhamma as a whole eightfold path. Because then you'd be passionate because you're exercising restraint. You have a view of what causes suffering, how to see it, how to relinquish it as the intention, right? Mindfulness. So, and you're seeing the unfolding reality as it's coming, in joy and delight, in a sense, arises moment to moment in just a free, unattached, equanimous mind.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's a pure unconditioned joy,
yes.
Meaning it's not arising from a conditioned mind.
From a concentrated, unattached, liberated mind.
Yes, and it's not creating self-referential craving, although it may engender more desire for deepening understanding, which is good.
That's the truth in happiness.
books.
It is. That's a great name for a book. But that really is a really good discussion. Thank you for starting it. There's an underlying malaise that goes with being ignorant. Now I gotta preface that by saying, and an aspect of ignorance is the need to continue to ignore the conditions that give rise to ignorance. There's this underlying malaise that goes with ignorance that we want to ignore. The great courage of Siddhartha Gautama was he was willing to face this thing that everybody else wanted to ignore. The general malaise, the dukkha of life. But when we start to recognize or even have the initial desire to look at this and maybe see if there's another way to live in the world, that itself can create its own kind of suffering and can say, well, this is suffering. This is agitating to me. I shouldn't even be doing this. But that's just another aspect of ignorance. It's something that we have to go through, work our way through, and recognize. And maybe this is the biggest hindrance. The Buddha talks about the 5 hindrances. This is kind of a generalization of all of those. To recognize that we're creating the hindrance to our own freedom. We're not willing to practice restraint because restraint seems contrary to solving the problem of malaise. What we're taught, substituting a word for dukkha, I guess they're using malaise. What we're taught is in order to deal with our dukkha, we got to find things that make us feel good. But all of those things are rooted in self-referential views. All of them are impermanent. It doesn't mean we shouldn't have a nice piece of chocolate cake or an interesting conversation or dinner or vacation or anything else. It simply means we shouldn't create attachments to that. We shouldn't create identities to those things. We shouldn't create passion. The fire discourse attachments to passion. We shouldn't create passions to those things that make us feel good or create passions against those things that might detract from that. We should be dispassionate about that. That's how the Buddha used the word again. We should be dispassionate about those things in the world that are impermanent. And we should be passionate about developing awakening, developing the Eightfold Path.
Especially in the beginning of the path, when you first start seeing all the things that aren't working in your life. And you kind of bounce from one to the other. Think, oh, that way, no. That way, no. And it gets pretty disheartening like that. So until you finally get to see which things do work, then the tide is turned.
If you have the kshanti, the patient forbearance to go through, especially the initial phase, but then to continue with the Dhamma practice when it feels like you don't want to practice restraint anymore. Meaning might be that an aspect of restraint could be, I don't feel like sitting this afternoon, because I'm too involved. Restraint says, I'm going to sit for 20 minutes. Develop this. You have to do it. You have to go through that. But that, again, that the hindrances, the malaise I just mentioned, it's all part of dukkha. Rooted in ignorance, and a conditioned mind wants to ignore anything that might end its own ignorance.
Is it the same to say don't create a dependence on that acquisition, that chocolate cake, so it's all right to enjoy that and be in the moment, but don't live for that moment. Don't depend on that for your happiness or your peace or your state of mind.
Yes. In fact, I would say it's more than all right. I would say that it's necessary, but don't become attached to it. It's necessary in the sense that we should be enjoying every moment of our lives. And the reason why we don't is because we want more than what the moment has given us. Or less. But even that is an act of wanting more. Life is flowing through us. We don't have the choice of more or less in a realistic way. Well, I mean, we can hoard more, but that's not really what I'm talking about. What's occurring right now is what's occurring. There can't be any less, and there can't be any more. But we can be at peace with not having more or less. More or less.
I knew someone once who would make decisions not to do something because she was anticipating disappointment.
I know. Okay. Yeah. And there's extreme examples of that you just don't go out of the house anymore because
Right.
I don't want to, and I will not participate in my life because there's been too many disappointments. I mentioned this about last week, but it's a good example. I was talking about Howard Hughes in a slightly different context. But look at one of the world's most brilliant men, and look how he ended up, because he was so concerned about getting disappointed.
That
It's just an extreme example.
It's a perfect example of thinking that the outer stuff is the problem. And that's the whole confusion. It's the inner stuff. So if you're tending and training on restraint and your inner resiliency, you can go out, you can go in, you can make decisions,
You can handle disappointment.
because you understand that the what is your responsibility and what is the dukkha of the world that's just occurring, as Jonathan says. So we the house catches on fire, that's the house's problem. If you're upset by it, that's your inner issue. You may end up, knowing that you have to get a new house and get insurance and all those things.
Those are the practical things of living in the world.
The issue is we need to work in here, and that stuff will occur, and we'll deal with it. We'll make skillful decisions. We won't be blown away, hopefully, at some point.
We won't fall into heedlessness. Mindlessness.
We won't pull poison ivy and then rub our eye 20 times over and over, and then do it again and again.
Stop doing that. These four.
Aversion is arising, and I'm attached to not having itches.
Well, practice a little restraint.
I'm trying.
These four suttas really do get to the heart of the matter, don't they? We need to learn. Excuse me. Pop-ups. The whole point of the Dhamma is to learn restraint. Another way of looking at it is ignorance leads to unrestraint. It's a mind rooted in ignorance that insists that each and every thought be a self-referential thought, and those thoughts start churning because they're self-referential. We need them to maintain an ego self. That's where that whole idea comes from, that I can't quiet my mind. I got this monkey mind. It's always going. The story's always going. Well, it is. And that's another aspect of the common human problem with dukkha.
I was just going to say insatiability arises.
Yeah, and there's nothing that can satiate that. Once it gets going, and it's going in every one of us to some extent or another. If you're a human being and you have yet to address that problem, you're stuck until you do something to interrupt that constant process of feeding that ego, of continuing ignorance. Ignorance insists on continued ignorance. And the way that ignorance is continued is through distraction. And that distraction is fueled by contact with the senses. If we can practice restraint through a well-concentrated mind, we interrupt that process. It's just another way of describing what we're talking about is another way of describing dependent origination. And maybe in a little bit more meaningful way, more or less. Let's go around the room. Ron, good to see you.
Well, I don't think I have anything to add. Let's continue.
Glad you're here. Matthew?
Good to see everybody. I don't have too much. I really like this series. This is cool. And just seeing that restraint as outlined in the Eightfold Path, or restraint as the Eightfold Path, is what brings understanding to the three marks of existence.
That's good. You could say that each factor of the Eightfold Path speaks to a specific type of restraint too. It's there to be developed. Thank you. Keith, good to see you tonight.
Good to see you. I've been restraining myself from Dhamma class. Not so great. Well, I did a little traveling and I was sick last week. I'm very happy to be back and get my practice back on track. That's about it. I'm just happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad you're here, Keith. Hello, Helen.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm great. But not that I'm making. Just you are great. My meditation is going well. I like this practice, this sutta here. It's very clear and simple and uncomplicated.
Yeah.
It seems like it's one you could easily explain to anyone. Some of what we learn, we have to have a really deep foundation that we're building on to get where we are. But this one, I think, is so fundamental that I think it's an easy one that you could even work into a conversation with someone that it might be helpful to you. So I really appreciate this one very much.
Thank you. I'm glad you're here. Now we'll find out just how easy it is. Jay, what'd you think of this?
Well, there's a Hebrew term called Besher, which put me here somehow. It's just God's way. Very timely, and just really happy to meet everybody here, and happy to be here, part of this. Thank you all very much. And as the newbie, I'll just leave it at that and take it over.
Thank you. I'm so glad you joined us. Can I ask you one question about the meditation? You were able to maintain the method? You recognize you were caught up in your thoughts, you came back to your breath?
Yes.
That's the basic practice. That if you continue with that, I say this at every class, especially when there's someone new, start with short periods of meditation, 2 or 3 or 4 minutes. If you can do that consistently twice a day and be part of a Sangha, I hope you join us again. Very soon you'll have a well-established meditation practice, and then you can learn about the other things gradually over time.
The restraint.
You've learned a lot already. There's a yellow booklet out there that describes the meditation method in a little bit more detail. Please take that, and if you want, you can go on my website. There's a recording of this meditation method that you can download and listen to and help you guide you. And if you want to get my newsletter, you can sign up. We have classes here Tuesday and Thursday evening, and Saturday morning at 8:30. So I hope to see you again. Good to see you.
Thank you.
More, good to see you. Yes.
So it sounds like more that I like the air conditioner over here. I have nothing to add. I think I said enough, but what I have been thinking about, or considering, is just also how much restraint is a part of concentration, is a part of meditation practice. So when I would find myself during the sit, just kind of following a thought, and just recognizing that. That was restraint.
Yeah, no, you're right. And even where the Buddha's going through practicing restraint at the eye, the ear, even though it's just a thought, usually in meditation, that thought is usually driven by something from one of our senses that's distracting us in meditation. It's right there.
Yeah.
Thank you. Lorna, good to see you.
Good to be here. I really don't have much to say, but I'm just grateful for all the reminders. This is very specific to the problem, and it's as clear as day when you're sitting here out in the world. So easy. It's not so easy for me anyway.
For everyone.
I've had days when, times when I just so full of my ego thoughts and accepting things through my senses and judging it and all this, and it just ends up like a soup in your mind that you just so many thoughts go. It's just like soup, and it's really hard when you're feel and are in that frame of mind to think every thought is a complete waste of time. Even though I'm sitting here and I see it and I understand it, you know, I get out in the world and everything just. So, yeah, I need to be mindful of my senses and ear contact and taste and smell and just as you've said tonight, this sutta is just being made for me today. I think it's very specific and it's probably just what I need at the time. In fact, just to expand on that, I think the whole 3 sessions that you've had on restraint, I think it's been a very good thing to do, to have sort of consistent teachings on such an important subject. So I thank you for doing the 4 sessions. I'll be doing one next week as well. I think it's a good idea.
Thank you for saying that. It's my pleasure. You mentioned you get out in the world and it's hard to practice restraint. That is the problem. That's why when you read the Ratana Sutta, the Buddha is basically teaching those poor folks that had all those trouble to take refuge, a real refuge in the Dhamma. And it's the only real refuge you can take. The 2 suttas that I spoke of recently and on retreat, the Nagara Sutta and the Loka Sutta was, I think, the week we came back here, maybe. No, it was the Sunday retreat. Both of those refer to, in the Pali language, to the world. And you remember in the Nagara Sutta, the Buddha starts with saying, the world is a flame. And then he goes in and explains how he became joined with the world in the difficult process he had in extracting himself from the world, from his clinging thoughts, his self-referential thoughts. Remember where he talks about the feedback loop between self-referential thoughts and consciousness rooted in ignorance. He couldn't get out of it until he recognized and developed within himself, and it wasn't a methodical process in him, like discernment, restraint, but really the Eightfold Path bloomed within the Buddha. He's pretty flowery. Bloomed within the Buddha during his awakening process. He developed that during that 40 days.
Just to add to what you said, when I get very caught up in the world, and that fire, the world, you know, your senses are a fire, your thoughts are a fire, you know, you are a fire.
Yeah.
You just absorb it all. And at the moment, it puts you on a bit of a high. You know, you can get a bit charged with it, and, you know, I can anyway, and think, you know, I feel great.
Yeah,
but there's the other side that it's not the way to go, and it's, you know, it reflects in your meditation practice. You can't hold the thought and your breath, and I can make all the mistakes. I really can.
Yeah.
Make them all, but I'm here.
Well, you're here and you're doing well and you're contributing a lot, Lorna. Remember how this? I don't know if you remember the introduction to this whole series a couple weeks ago. That I quoted that saying. I quoted saying, "Banquet, don't leave the table empty." I mean, that's kind of the mantra of the modern age, isn't it? We should take in, get as much as we can. And we become inflamed with that. What's the term for someone who has taken in too much? They're burned out. You know, they're burned out by their own passions.
Yeah.
And up there
And it really is a true medical condition. I'm not trying to make light of it. This is, you know, people end up at 25. I mean, I was burned out. Another word that I use is shot out, but you know, at the time I was 26 years old. And many people are like that. We see kids that are they're burned out before they even get out of high school. You know, and we see incredibly successful people that 60 years old, they're burned out. Well, why? What were we going to say more?
Because the Buddha said if it's impermanent, it's dukkha, it's not self.
Yep.
That's it. Period. When he goes through that and whatever that sutta is this, can it be is it permanent? If it's impermanent, then
Yeah.
it has to be dukkha.
Yeah.
It has to be.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter if you believe you may. I don't have much restraint, you know. But like I do, like I haven't really.
How does Jay know you so well?
But I really have been applying as more by effort than I usually do. Just to come back to the embodied experience, like really throughout the day, because I can go through a whole day like, wow, what was going on? So I'm really exercising restraint to just keep coming back to the embodied felt experience. And I feel like it's very effective. Obviously, it's a Dhamma, it's work, it's good medicine. The medicine works. The medicine, I can do a 12-hour day, Matt, and I practice many, many opportunities to release tension. It's a very, very different experience. So on that level, it feels nice, yes. It feels nice because of restraint and embodiment and being with the Dhamma, being present with what's arising is very freeing. And I think it's very clear. So, whatever the chocolate cake can feel good, or, feeling happy can feel good, but it's impermanent, therefore it's dukkha, therefore it's just that. It's not who we are.
But every time you catch yourself at the senses gate and realize that you haven't been practicing restraint or something, just laugh it off, say, okay, whoops, and here's my chance to start
That's
over
it.
again.
Yep.
Don't, be gentle with yourself, as you always say.
Yeah.
Don't say, here I go again,
Yeah.
screwed up, I'll
Look at
never
what you just
get it.
said. There I go. That all that does is create
Yeah.
another me to protect and beat up. So you're so right, Helen. The key to all of this is being gentle with her. Yeah, that's a profound act of restraint, to not beat myself up.
Yeah.
It's almost ingrained in us, especially in Western society, that the way to improve ourselves is first find out what's wrong, give yourself 40 lashes, and all you're doing is reinforcing that behavior. Very wise. Thank you. Liz, good to see you tonight.
Good to see you. Good to see everyone. It's really good to be here. I think we all hear what we need to hear when we come to class and come to meditation. And the thing I've been relying a lot on lately is to be at peace with a less than peaceful mind. That's really, I would say it's life-saving. Yeah, I would say it's life-saving. Not to exaggerate, but it's just, it's a relief to not have to hold on to that feeling of an unpeaceful mind. Try to, unknit it or change it, or, it's just at that moment when things are chaotic, to be able to just be at peace with it being chaotic and accepting that. So that's what I've been working on. Do need to get back in the saddle a little bit more, but there are key elements of the Eightfold Path that we're all going to find useful for the conditions of our own lives. And that's what I find the most valuable, that you can just sort of go through them, and by going through them, it disengages the feedback loop, and it's good. So even on a bad day, it's better.
Thank you, Liz. So I have to ask you though, it's because of the right effort that you've put in developing that understanding that you're able to understand. If I said to you the first time you walked in here, Liz, you need to be at peace with a less than peaceful mind state, would you keep coming?
It's like telling someone who's upset to calm down.
Yeah, I guess it is. But when you have the right, well, that's actually happened to someone. In fact, I think the first time I said it, was to someone who was coming here. And I said it with the right intention, but they took it that way. And we had a long conversation about it afterwards. And
It's good you had the opportunity to have that conversation.
Well, that's why it is so hard to talk about this. I was talking to someone on Friday night who's just having a really hard time, turned down from 2 jobs she thought she had. She's my age, she's just having a really hard time. And I wanted to tell her about this, and I would say to her, and I've known her a long time, I would say, I know this is going to sound a little crazy. I'd give her a little more, and then she would digest that, and then I would say, well, again, this might sound a little crazy, and I'll give her a little more, and I'll give her, the link to your website and stuff. You can explain it better than I can.
well, encourage her
That's
to
a little crazy.
encourage her to give me a call or send me an email, and just let her. I'd be happy to talk to her. Yeah.
And after you go through this for a while and you see that there's relief in the Dharma that does make a bad day less bad, after you practice it for even a short period of time, and you know in your heart that this could help someone, it's hard not to say, I've got the answer, and not sound like a lunatic. So, anyway, I'll share her with her your information.
Thank you.
Where it goes.
The Dhamma really is a true refuge. I mean, that's what it is. Maybe that's the way to present it. I mean, initially it doesn't. People don't need to know. This is a teaching of the Buddha, but
Start with where they are.
yeah, and what it's done for you directly. A much more calm and peaceful mind. You can tell someone, I'm able to be at peace with less than peaceful mind states, and that might get them.
People, it's the best thing I've ever done.
Yeah, I say the same thing. Thank you, Liz. Bonnie, good to see you.
Good to be here. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
When everybody talks, they think about all kinds of ways of relating to it, I think, but I feel like even for myself, when somebody offers something to me, if I'm not ready for it, it's like offering somebody medicine. I think if it, like Moira was saying, it's like medicine. To ask for that healing, and sometimes it's frustrating. So it's really nice to surround yourself with people who you can have that commonality with, if not all the people who are important in your life, at least some people, so that you can make sense. But the concept of restraint has really been, it is clear. I like visual, I like examples of what it would look like, or blah, 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 but the restraint is very clear, whether it's related to whatever sense, but it really is informed, it's deepening my information about the choices that I have.
Yeah.
That at every point where I want more, or I want something that I can have, when I see that I can, and I think the meditation, going through all the steps of the Eightfold Path and applying that helps me to have the space to understand that it doesn't have to be the same. And every day I get lots of ways to practice all of these things, but the restraint specifically to the choices that I can make that assist in deepening as I was just skillfully choosing and letting go of how things have to be. So it's been, there's a sadness too, because if I pass through a portal or a place that not everybody's willing to step into with me, then I make a choice whether I leave them or the experience behind. But I don't want to feel like, you're beating yourself up because you've made this choice out of vanity or out of, not vanity, but almost selfishness in order to, someone keeps hitting me in the head, I don't want to have to be in that space where they keep hitting me in the head. Yeah.
It's beautifully put, Bonnie. The Buddha never describes himself as the Buddha or a Buddha. He describes himself, the word he uses was Tathagata, T-A-T-H-A-G, blah, blah, blah. And what that means is, it literally means he left the world, this one has left the world and established themselves in reality. That's a lot contained in those couple syllables, but that's what it means. And what that means is that he's taken refuge from the world into reality. He's also done it after a short period of time with like-minded people, but a comparatively small number of people to the rest of the world. But that doesn't mean that he never went back into the world. In fact, every day, the Buddha got up off his cushion, walked into town with a bowl, got his food for the day, and taught a little Dhamma to people that were interested. He never stood on a street corner screaming the Dhamma either. And he taught his monks and nuns to do the same thing. They wandered around. It interested me that the Buddha never left a 400 square mile area of northern India, southern Nepal, in his entire life. And yet here his teachings are all over the world. But every day he was involved in teaching the Dhamma to people that were interested, but never to someone who wasn't interested. And I think that was important. I think that's one of the reasons why it was so well taken even back then. Because people had to decide. They heard of this guy that figured it out. All right, let's go listen to him. If he was out there saying, you know what, with a big bell, and maybe even a bigger bowl than the one he carried, I don't think anybody would have listened to him.
I think when I come from a place of wanting to help somebody or make a change or fix things or realize I don't have to fix anything.
Well, the great understanding, the great compassion. Remember that the Buddha describes himself prior to his awakening as an unawakened bodhisattva. Bodhisattva means that he was a human being who was full of great compassion, but he was lacking that one thing of true understanding that led to wisdom. And so it was at that point that he understood how to also present the teachings in a way that was useful. An aspect of right speech is that you know that your speech is going to have a meaningful effect on people. If you know that it won't, you keep your mouth shut. That's right speech.
That's restraint.
That's restraint. But in order to do that, it seems in the world today, the people that practice wrong speech, they're missing that restraint part of understanding that what I'm saying isn't really necessary or meaningful. And that's where wisdom comes in. That's where the wisdom of a Buddha comes in. You know when to speak and when not to speak. Because you could be saying the most love, the intention could be the most compassionate intention. But if the person isn't ready to hear what you're saying, you can do a lot of harm to those people. You really can. At the very least, you're just wasting time and you're wasting the Dhamma.
Right. Yeah, I have done that very much just in my line of work, and you know stories like trying to have somebody feel better about their illness or their parents' illness or their not have them feel better, have them. I think they should understand it. I think they should understand. I have a 97-year-old woman with a broken elbow, and she just keeps complaining that her fingers are not as strong as they were. She's healed beautifully. But that's not the issue. She wants to have a complaint. So, I just usually will say to her, it's really difficult for you being here in this assisted living or something like that, because me telling her that her hand is fine, but that's not the thing. It's a waste of time, and I did try telling her that a couple of times. I had to learn by thinking about it.
Okay.
Did you say he never left the 400 square mile area?
That's what it has been said. Yes.
And he didn't have a car, obviously, or. That's still pretty impressive.
Oh, it is. They all spent a lot of time just walking.
Yeah, right.
he would, the typical, his typical year, he spent 3 months of the rainy season, usually. I mean, this isn't, not every year, but most of the time he spent it at that monastery that I mentioned often, out at the Pandika's monastery, during the rainy season, because it was just impractical. The rest of India was just one big monsoon. But then the rest of the year, the other 9 months, all of them walked around northern India, teaching whoever was interested in learning. And along the way, he encountered the great leaders and the people of power, and that had a profound effect. But again, never left that relatively small area.
There were horses and there were wagons and all that. I've never seen any account of him doing
Never heard
anything but walk.
And I've never heard him say he got up on his horse, or, you know.
Or somebody.
Well, that's
He was carried in the last few weeks.
yeah, but he was always on 2 feet, that, as far as I know. You know? Yeah, it really, when you really look at this, look at the story, it's remarkable. And what's even more remarkable to me is that those teachings are still here today.
There's a
His words that he gave 2,600 years ago were just uttered here in this room. It's amazing to me.
There's a
Sorry.
documentary I just have been watching. It's a story of what's called the Buddha. And it's Richard Gere is narrating it. I don't know if it's what channel it's on, PBS or something, but it's really interesting. But they're talking about his life, and some of it's like, oh, okay. Like, I'm wondering where it's going and how they're presenting it, but they present his birth and his life as sort of, it is like a fairy tale in some way, like that he was born out of the side of his mother, or, but then they talk about his real existence, so. They
interwove a lot of fable into what was there.
I think so.
And there was a lot of influences from that idea that he was born from the side of his mother probably came from the Tibetan influence into his story.
Was it a cesarean delivery? That's what it sounds like.
Maybe, but
That's brilliant.
his mom did die about a week after he was born.
Sounds like a cesarean.
They didn't have cesarean back then.
Oh,
Poitou.
Well, that starts some.
Right. They should have. They should have.
It started on the side.
Well, they started with Caesar, that's where the name comes from. One of the Caesars.
Poitou was a Chinese physician in the Han Dynasty, and he was the first person to do abdominal surgery.
and who was that?
Wow.
A man named Poitou,
We got some brilliant
What
minds
year
here.
is that in relation to?
200 BC. So
So it was after.
after.
Yeah. 300 years
he was,
after.
He was,
Successful
Remarkable.
in abdominal
Oh,
surgery.
yeah. yeah.
Yikes.
First recorded.
So, any other questions or comments about restraint?
Okay.
All right, well, let's practice restraint and conclude our class. Just an announcement, we have our picnic is July 15th, rain date the 16th at
It's a
Nora's.
restraint-free day.
There's info.
We'll all bring chocolate cake.
There's info on the website that's linked in the emails. And our next retreat's coming up. Let's finish with what's that?
Yeah, I think
We'll finish with the Buddha's words in metta. So find your relaxed meditative posture and gently close your eyes and gently close your mouths. And again, take a moment to become aware of the sensation of breathing in your body. And let that mindfulness of your breath cease any distracting thoughts to the past or to the future, or that may have arisen from our talk tonight. And metta means goodwill or loving kindness, and we've first expressed that to ourselves and then to all others. Metta is an expression of those of us developing the Eightfold Path and an ongoing expression of an awakened, fully mature human being. And these are the Buddha's words on metta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied. unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing, in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. Radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Thank you all for a wonderful class. Peace.